BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNid88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And welcome to BBOR, the home of true crime talk radio and your premier destination for unsolved mysteries, criminal psychology, and exploring the dark side of cyberspace. My name is Ned DeHaan, and I am your host, as well as the creator of AstroPsych 400 here on YouTube, and regular contributor to the Zodiac Killer channel. And a great way to support these shows is just by listening to some more content. But you can also go over to Amazon.com and have a look at the book Killer on a White Horse, written by me, Ned DeHaan. It is a novel, murder mystery, inspired by the Zodiac Manson connection, but it is indeed fictional. However, who doesn't love a good mystery? And there is always the TeeSpring page. Feel free to check out some of the merchandise. And remember, being weird is not a crime. Let the show begin. This episode of Black Box Online Radio is brought to you by Rep Sports and Raze Energy. Are you a fan of energy drinks, protein shakes, and health foods? Well, I sure am. I use the stuff almost every single day. They sell Raze Energy products at my local gym, but you can have them shipped to your home. Use the coupon code NED075, that's NED075, for discounts applied at the checkout. The link is in the description box.
Okay, hello everybody. Today is Friday, another Anything Goes Friday. Welcome to the show. Today is the day when any subject is fair game, and perhaps by now some of you must be familiar with the story of Elizabeth Holmes, the now disgraced former CEO of the former company Theranos. Some of you probably followed this story from the very beginning, but I swear I must have been living under a rock for the last decade or something, because I did not learn about Elizabeth Holmes and the story of Theranos until only a couple weeks ago. I was just sitting, looking at my phone, and there was this recommended video from Inside Edition, the YouTube channel for that program, that is. Inside Edition is a program that is mostly like a tabloid magazine, but done in the TV show format. However, sometimes they do highlight true crime cases, and that's mostly why I turn to them, even though they don't give you very detailed versions of the events and they jump between the stories very quickly. But they were talking about a woman named Elizabeth Holmes, and the real reason why I clicked on the video was I was trying to remember, Elizabeth Holmes, I know that name, but I was thinking this must be an actress, and I don't know if I was confusing her with Elizabeth Banks or Katie Holmes or somebody else altogether. But no, Elizabeth Holmes is not an actress, of course. This was the first that I learned about her a couple weeks ago, and then after I watched that one video on Inside Edition, the YouTube algorithm was just begging me to watch content about Elizabeth Holmes, and the next one that I found was a documentary that had been done by Yahoo Finance. I didn't even know they made documentaries, but yes, they told this very large story about a young, ambitious woman who created this public image of herself, mostly modeled on the business thinking of Steve Jobs, but definitely based on other influences as well, particularly Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook, and she wanted to revolutionize biomedical science. She had the plan to create and distribute and mass market something called the Edison machine, which could use a single drop of blood, and it could run, first they said 70 tests and get data for based on these 70 test results, and then it said that it could even do more than that. They were going to build these centers in Walgreens that were like care centers or patient access centers, and they were going to use these blood testing machines, and then people could sit down in lounge chairs, more or less. It was a very big plan, but it was all fake. It was all just somebody putting on an act and a facade, deceiving people into investing into the company, and they didn't have the actual science to back it up. They didn't have the technology to back it up. And I know that that's probably a watered-down version in its own right. Please excuse that terrible metaphor, but that's more or less what seems to have happened. And I believe that the reason why so many channels are trying to promote Elizabeth Holmes content, or that the YouTube algorithm is simply going wild, is a new show has come out called The Dropout, starring Amanda Seyfried playing Elizabeth Holmes. And that seems to be one of the bigger pieces of news. And also, her future is still in jeopardy. We don't know exactly whether or not she's going to be going to jail, and if so, for how long. But yes, I've been watching The Dropout, and I am halfway through the series. And I was on Facebook, and I saw that Michael Sudduth, who has been a guest on this show, talking about the story of James Lineker, actually. But Michael Sudduth posted that they should have released the entire series all at once. I don't know why certain streaming services choose to do that. Sometimes they'll release a show all at once, and other times you have to wait every week to get a new episode. I mean, sure, they released all of Joe versus Carol on Peacock all at the same time. Yeah, didn't really need that too much. No, but I want to see The Dropout all the way until conclusion. It is definitely a binge watch show. And I would also like to cite some other sources for this discussion. As I already said, Inside Edition, as well as the Yahoo Finance documentary on Elizabeth Holmes, Theranos, the movie, which is available here on YouTube for free. And then there is also the interviews that have been done with John Carreyrou, who was the journalist for the Wall Street Journal, and also went on to write a book called Bad Blood. He has shared a lot of info very publicly about the Elizabeth Holmes case, and I've said very frequently on the channel that I like to compare and contrast the real-life stories, or like the nonfiction sources, documentaries, articles, and podcasts that have been done on the subject, with the dramatizations that have been done in something like The Dropout. And in the John Carreyrou interview that I was most recently watching, they said that there is going to be a movie coming out based on Elizabeth Holmes that will have Jennifer Lawrence actually playing her. So there's a show, movie, there's going to be a lot of media coverage. The story is not going away anytime soon. How did this happen? How did a woman obtain all of this success so quickly and then have it all slip away? It's like that moment when someone is king or queen of the world, and then they have to throw the castle away, or they have the fall from grace. And there are lots of people in the world who are con artists, and there are lots of people who are liars, but they don't amass billions of dollars, not even millions, but billions of dollars. And that's what Elizabeth Holmes was able to do. And not only about the money, but also getting people to sign on to her board and getting people to back her. Whether it was Henry Kissinger or Jim Mattis or some of the people like the Schultz family. It really is quite shocking. If you ever watch the show The Dropout, though, they wanted to give their interpretation of the events, and they presented Elizabeth Holmes as a woman who started out in a very ambitious way, but she was mostly rejected by her peers. She was somewhat of a social outcast. She was awkward. She wasn't very good at getting along with people, and she was very focused on academic pursuits as well as career pursuits and developing this vision of becoming a successful person. And I think it was in Theranos, the movie that is available here on YouTube. That is a documentary, mind you. That one said that she had this goal from a very young age to be a billionaire. And I think that is so important because that really goes to show you it's not about success. And it's not just about doing something. Back in 2020, I heard the comedian Noel Casler for the first time, and he was talking about this exact concept about how people go on to become billionaires and such, or these high-profile CEOs that we are so familiar with. You don't have to go through any of these nasty, twisted, corrupt schemes that some people like Elizabeth Holmes would have done to obtain money or to be successful. What he said was, you could start a hot dog business and it could be successful and you could get rich doing that. get yourself a hot dog cart. If it's successful, then you can have a food truck. And if that works out, you can get 2 food trucks and then open a restaurant and then turn it into a brand. And A to B to C, all the way to level Z. And you can expand your hot dog business. But that's not what it's about. It's about money, it's about power, it's about prestige, and it's also about this new definition of success that we've been talking about. And I think a lot of people saw that in Elizabeth Holmes, that there are these stories of people like Steve Jobs, like Bill Gates, like Mark Zuckerberg, and even other people who have gone about it in just a little bit of a different way, like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. Although the whole Jobs Gates Zuckerberg angle, I think, is more relevant to the way that Elizabeth Holmes was presenting herself, because in The Dropout, they say that she is ambitious. She has designed something. She wants to get a patent for a medical device, and she talks to a professor who simply says that you're rushing this. You're doing it too fast. You're trying to achieve too quickly. And what she says is, as a woman, you have to get it right, or else they're just going to throw excuses around. And I'm paraphrasing that, heavily paraphrasing, mind you, but that's exactly what happened. Because when I was watching that Yahoo Finance documentary, like one commentator simply said, the way that Elizabeth Holmes was able to pull off this $1 billion fraud scheme was she was talking to a bunch of men who were not thinking with their brains, but rather with something in between their legs. And is that the truth? Is that the truth? Is this just some woman who reshaped her image? And is this just a woman who put on a very convincing sales pitch and she was charming or charismatic or maybe even sociopathic or narcissistic in a certain way to where she could deceive men just purely based on manipulative and persuasive factors? No, absolutely not. I mean, they even talk about this in The Dropout, where one character just says, well, she's young and blonde, and someone provides an alternative reason, and he says, well, she's young and blonde. Absolutely not. Were they just a bunch of men who were captivated by her appearance? No. Was this just the nation looking for a young female entrepreneur to succeed in biomedical science? No. Was this just about having another American success story that was done in a slightly different way? No. How did this happen? It's all of the above. Everything that I just said. All of the above, all of those factors. It was everything. I mean, just based on the sources that I've been looking at. And that's how people operate. It's not one single issue, it's not one single item. But they talk about this in the show, The Dropout, when they really focus in on how this company branded itself around Elizabeth Holmes, the image, and they even advised her in the show to heavily change her image to try to be more professional, and she modeled her clothing and wardrobe choices after Steve Jobs. She got his marketing company involved to promote them. She started copying Steve Jobs's habits, wearing red lipstick, one of her original ones, and most famously altering her voice. Now, that was actually the first video that I saw on Inside Edition, because they were talking about how Elizabeth Holmes reportedly faked her voice, which sounds a little bit weird, but what they mean is that she actually had a rather normal pitch voice for a woman, kind of high pitched, so to speak, and many people describe her voice as baritone when she is featured in interviews or just any public appearance. Then she was kind of lowering her voice to sound more professional. And I know it sounds kind of silly, and I absolutely don't think the voice that she was using matched her body, but I was also watching Dr. Todd Grande's video about Elizabeth Holmes, and he's brought up some very good psychological observations, as he does. But one point, though, where I absolutely disagree with Todd Grande was he said that he didn't believe that Elizabeth Holmes was putting on a fake voice because it would be very difficult for somebody who isn't a professional actor to put on a fake voice for an extended period of time. And I absolutely disagree with that statement because so many people do it and so many people alter their voices. I mean, this does happen. Some people believe that their natural speaking voice is kind of a little bit off or it's not the way they want it to sound, so they work to change it. Some people have a speech therapist, or other people can alter it through practice of their own. Or how about people who come to a different country? Like, I'm in the United States of America. Some people move from Canada or the United Kingdom or Australia or New Zealand, and over time they intentionally alter their accents. Some people just lose their accents naturally, and once you start talking in a different way, it really isn't so difficult to change the way you talk. Especially dealing with someone's native language, English, in the case of Elizabeth Holmes, or all the examples that I just cited. But Elizabeth Holmes didn't permanently alter her voice. She was definitely putting on an act, and people have brought up numerous examples since Dr. Todd Grande made his video. I felt, yes, indeed, she was faking her voice, and she could switch back into her high-pitched voice whenever she wanted, and then lower it for the professional operations. And, I mean, that might be a little bit weird, but it worked. Now, here are some other reasons about this company, Theranos, and why it didn't succeed. The show The Dropout presented their take on the subject as they were genuinely trying to create this device that would run the blood tests and give you all these results. They genuinely wanted to do this, but their interpretation was that Elizabeth Holmes got so overwhelmed with the public persona that she was just in so deep, it consumed her. The fame, the fortune, the career, the persona that she had created, it consumed her. And even halfway through the show, she's already completely gone, and there's no turning back. She can't just be the friendly, good-hearted person who is going to just try and do nice things for the good of man. Instead, she is completely put that behind her for the pursuit of her own ambitions. And I said that Dr. Todd Grande did make some good observations. One of them was that he did not believe that Elizabeth Holmes was a psychopath, but rather, did she have some type of narcissistic disorder or some traits of narcissism? Much more likely. And I said on the show The Dropout that she's played by Amanda Seyfried, and I think she does an excellent job. But when I look at the real-life Elizabeth Holmes, I am absolutely more captivated by her, and I think there are a few reasons why. I mean, firstly, one of them is being authentic and real, and Amanda Seyfried is an actress putting on a performance. But just in terms of the alluring nature or the ability to engage the people in her like public speaking opportunities and presentations, the real Elizabeth Holmes is definitely a little bit more magnetic. And one possible, I repeat, possible reason why is that she has a much more symmetrical face than Amanda Seyfried, and some people believe that that is heavily connected to not only brain development but also human evolution and just how we perceive people. People who have extremely symmetrical faces are reported to be more likely to be psychopathic or sociopathic, and I'm purely citing the ramblings of individuals on the internet for that. I mean, I'm certainly not a neuroscientist to compare their findings, but I can comprehend what they're saying because Dr. Michael Shermer said very clearly that we are attracted to people who have clear skin and symmetrical faces because they are signs of strong genetic health. And there could be something about how people are just always unafraid of this person, or they're just always attracted to this person in some way, and some individuals learn how to manipulate that desire, and I'm sure Elizabeth Holmes did that later in her life, and she's definitely reported to have been somewhat of, as I said, a quirky individual in her younger years, but it's really quite a mystery all the same about how people function. One person whom I haven't yet mentioned in this episode is someone named Sunny Balwani, who was the romantic partner of Elizabeth Holmes for quite some time, and he is a man whom she met in China while she was trying to learn Mandarin Chinese, and they even learned a little bit together, so it seems. But Sunny Balwani was also a successful businessman all the same, sold a company for around $40 million, and he first becomes a romantic partner, then a friendly advisor, and then more of a professional advisor, and then a full-on part of the company, taking over as COO, was that Chief Operations Officer. And they say that he was just equally manipulative, controlling. He was prone to outbursts and fits of rage, and that it was just very simply he contributed to her out of control success, flying high and falling hard, but then they would eventually separate, and you'd have to wonder, without his connections or his influence on her, would all of these things have happened as well. And when I was watching that episode about Elizabeth Holmes on Dr. Todd Grande's channel, I was just shocked, like when I was reading through the comments section, about how these people are leaving comments, and I feel like the screenwriters for the show that Dropout must have just pulled these things out and then put it onto the show for Hulu. Because you're also reading things that, oh yeah, the grandson of George Schultz wanted to be a whistleblower, and he went to George Schultz and he told him that this company Theranos isn't able to do what they're saying, and they're covering it up, and they're lying to everybody, and they're just defrauding everyone, and he didn't want to listen. All of that stuff is in the Dropout, and this is years before the show was made. And a lot of people are wondering what is going to happen to Elizabeth Holmes, but one of the episodes of Inside Edition was even pointing out that she is still walking around freely, and her life really hasn't changed at all. She's no longer with Sonny Balwani, but she has a different partner, and they live in a very upscale estate, and she goes out very frequently, and she doesn't seem to be overly affected. But I think there's a certain point in that needs reiteration, and that is this whole desire for the billionaire package. That is another all of the above. It's not only about money, it's not only about success, it's not only about showing off. It's all of that and beyond. But they also point out, and I forget the first person to say this or else I'd cite the source, but it's something that we can all observe too, that Elizabeth Holmes was not like Mark Zuckerberg. She was not like Steve Jobs. Those guys were working with coding and websites as well as computer hardware. She was working in biomedical science. And the show's called The Dropout, and she dropped out roughly around 3 semesters into Stanford. But these guys like Jobs and Zuckerberg, they learned about a lot of these things on their own. And they even said Mark Zuckerberg knew a whole bunch about coding before he even went to college. And with Elizabeth Holmes, she just wasn't that well versed in biomedical sciences. She didn't actually comprehend everything that she was trying to explore. And on the Yahoo Finance documentary, they pointed out how a lot of other companies have been exploring different aspects of her technology, and they've gone further with it than she did. And they even talk about how, hey, this whole Theranos Edison idea, having a machine that can do many blood tests from a drop of blood, or a few drops of blood even, well, that's not completely impossible, and it might even happen in the future. Her plan was somewhat feasible. It's just she was refusing to outsource, refusing even to bring in other people, or just it had to all be done in a certain way. And that's what I think was the desire for success, the desire to manipulate the public perception in a certain way. It's not just about how there is this type of goal you want to achieve. I think it's something bigger than that. And like, have you guys ever watched the show Silicon Valley, where it's a fictional show that was on HBO Max. I haven't seen it in years, but they made so many jokes about how this is the lifestyle of Steve Jobs, and then how about this is the way that Larry Page and Sergey Brin live, the guys from Google. And I was just thinking, whoa. These CEOs from the business world and from the real-life Silicon Valley have just really left an impact on us, that someone's making a joke about Larry Page and Sergey Brin, and goodness gracious, I mean, we are very much used to these high-powered, successful, brilliant individuals who have built a brand and a culture all around them. And that's what I think Elizabeth Holmes wanted to do. But as far as achieving that, no, it didn't work. It was a massive billion-dollar fraud. And they say by the end of Theranos that that company had amassed a value of $9 billion, and Elizabeth Holmes's personal net worth was just south of $5 billion. So she did it. She became a billionaire, even though it was only for a little while, and it was done through more or less cheating. She was hardly good at it, but that's just kind of jumping into something too fast and realizing that, well, you can't fly, so you're going to fall, and if you land in the water and you can't swim, you're going to sink and drown. And that's more or less what I think the culmination of the story about Theranos is all about. And a lot of people point to how Elizabeth Holmes just really turned into someone who was giving lots of politicians answers, and you can see this very clearly if you ever watch her interview with Jim Cramer from Mad Money, when she just talks in circles, she's just smiling and laughing and telling a blatant lie. Lots of things that are very characteristic of someone who is narcissistic, absolutely. Also, of just the CEO politician culture that we often ignore, that a lot of people are psychopaths or sociopath, maybe narcissistic, or they are just flat out nasty, undesirable people, but they put on a very chic facade and they deceive us all. But what do you think about the story of Elizabeth Holmes? And I know I wasn't really going to reinvent the wheel with this episode. I just wanted to talk about some observations from the show The Dropout and compare them to the documentaries and the episodes that I had been watching. And as I understand, there's one out on HBO Max that is apparently pretty good, but I haven't seen that one yet. As I said, I was citing the Yahoo Finance one, Theranos the movie, Dr. Todd Grande's video, Jim Cramer's interview, the John Carreyrou interviews, an Inside Edition. And if anybody else has any other sources that they'd like to promote or suggest, you can put those in the comments section down below. Anybody can write the show at BlackBoxOnlineRadio at AOL.com. You can also get me on Instagram, BlackBoxNet88. My personal Facebook is in the description box, and you can even find the page for the Facebook show. That's just Black Box Online Radio. Feel free to have a look at the book Killer on a White Horse, the Teespring page, Raze Energy, Rep Sports. There are lots of things in the description box to go through, and I will see you over on Instagram for the bonus podcast. Until next time.